Good evening and welcome to our LGBTQ panel. I will be your moderator this evening. My name is Anne Dempsey. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a co-founder of Neighbor Pride and I'm also an out and proud Democrat. I have the honor of serving as the LGBTQ team lead for the DuPage County Democrats. We're very fortunate today to be joined by such an illustrious panel. Let's welcome Senator Mike Simmons. Senator Simmons is the first openly LGBTQ senator from Illinois. Thank you for representing us. Let's also welcome Representative Kelly Cassidy, the only openly LGBTQ member of the House General Assembly. Last but not least, a warm welcome to Chairman Ken Mejia-Beal, the first and only openly LGBTQ leader of a political party in Illinois. So let's kind of dive right in tonight and start getting to know each other. First, I would like your reactions to today's ruling by the Supreme Court. I think we have to give that a few minutes to kind of settle. It's been a rough time with the Supreme Court in recent weeks.
I'll jump in if nobody else is ready to go. I think we have to acknowledge something really important about all of this. For the last year, we and others, lots of marginalized groups have been the mole in the whack-a-mole game. And it's, the cumulative effect of being under constant attack or constantly defending yours or others' rights has to be acknowledged. And, there's a part of me that had a moment of I went to bed last night saying, another day in paradise, wondering what rights are still going to exist when I wake up tomorrow. And I do think, though, that we have to sort of create space for each other to heal. And that's not just within the LGBT community, right? This week alone, affirmative action, student loan forgiveness, a death penalty case, it's a lot. And those of us who are on the front lines in public spaces, in public positions, I think we often carry, we carry the rest of our community with us, and we carry the responsibility for being there for our community. And it is a lot, but it's also incredibly rewarding knowing that we're able to get on to forums like this and say, Illinois has made a promise and we're going to keep that promise. Right? Illinois has gone to great lengths to protect rights, and we're going to do everything we can within that power to make sure that rights are protected here in Illinois. And that's a great responsibility, but also an amazing gift to get to be actually doing something about it.
And I will keep it brief. I think that we are, it brings up residual anger for me. Like anger that I thought I was over the Trump voters in 2016. I thought I had forgiven them. And then things like this happen. I realize I'm still angry and the anger comes back. But the difference between now and then is I have hope. And I'm proud to be in Illinois. I'm happy to be in Illinois where we have really good leadership. And I am hopeful. I'm ready for the fight. And it's just a reminder that people are still under attack. And that's the reason we celebrate diversity and celebrate all of our differences, because it's those differences that make other people want to attack and knock us down, and we keep coming back. So we're ready.
Yeah. I mean, that kind of sums it up there, Mike.
Yeah. First, can I just say, on a human level, thank you, Ken, for organizing this. I've been looking forward to this panel for the last 3 weeks. And, I thought I had a daydream of what today was going to be like. I was like, it's the last day of Pride. What better thing to be doing than to be sitting down with Kelly Cassidy, Ken Mejia-Beal, and other folks from our community, and just talking, right? And talking about I was just so looking forward to the day, and 4 o'clock this Friday And I was hoping that all this shit wouldn't come down the pipe today like it did in yesterday.
Mhm.
You know, and we're still like grieving the 1 year. And I'm with Kelly. I don't want to use the word anniversary for that decision that court put in place, that man enabled that last
Mhm.
person who was president. Um, I I can't I can't lie. Like I'm fed up. I am
Mhm.
fed up. And today it took everything I had to like put on a smile and like go through our day as public officials and like do all the stuff that we have to do. But like when I see the like image of the Supreme Court justice flash across CNN, I want to take something and throw it at the screen and
Mhm.
just be like, these men in robes who are completely out of touch, who themselves have no clue what it's like to live in America except anything but being an oppressor,
Right.
puffed up with
Correct.
privilege, puffed up with access, just riding high on white supremacy and paternalism. And I'm just so angry that I got to have rights that I don't know if young people in our neighborhoods are going to have. And at the same time, though, Ken, I'm with you. It's not like part of what like I feel like we have to do is elected officials. I talked to somebody about this earlier. It's like I don't have the privilege to sit in my anger. I don't
Right.
have the privilege to sit here and be pissed and sulk, right? Because like this responsibility has been conferred upon us as LGBTQ leaders to fight like our communities. And that's why I'm happy, because I love a good fight. Like I love flipping over tables and just letting out all the oppressed feelings from my whole life as a gay, Black, tall, gangly, dreadlocked Black person who is fed up with America's bullshit, just
Yeah.
fed up with it through all the different identities that I didn't choose, that like I was born lucky enough to be. And I guess I'm going to spend the rest of my life fighting every freaking day so that by the time I die, we have at least the rights that we had when I was born, right? That's the mindset I'm in today.
Wow. Wow.
I highly recommend anyone who wants to feed that to read Justice Sotomayor's dissent in this
Yes.
case. She brought that same righteous rage. I actually told a friend when the decision came down, you know what? I'm eating dessert first. I read the dissent first.
There you go.
It really helped.
And
It is.
Kentucky Browns, let them eat
Like
cake.
Let them
yesterday,
eat cake.
exactly.
Yes.
I was feeling that.
Amazing. Yep.
It is such a privilege to be sitting here and knowing that our rights are being defended capably and ably by you guys. Um, it is such a privilege that as I look around, other states don't have.
Correct.
And the truth is, Mike and I are really lucky. You know, we both spend a fair bit of time in national spaces with other similarly situated legislators. And, you know, when I'm around some of the incredible folks like Michelle Rayner Goolsby in Florida, you know, Keturah Jackson in Kentucky, who are operating in like super minority spaces. Keturah is one of 24 Democrats in her chamber. And I watch them still score wins, right? And I watch them, and I do wonder, like, would I have it in me? Could I keep fighting? You know, like they are up against such insurmountable numbers that
Yes.
I am reminded on the daily how lucky Mike and I are.
Truth.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we're going to get back to some of the questions that I had prepared. Although this is so good, I hate to give it up. It makes all of us want to go out and fight harder.
Absolutely.
Okay, Senator Simmons, let's start with you as the most recently elected. Congratulations, by the
Thank you.
way. I've read a couple of interviews about you talking about bullying that you experienced as a child. Can we talk about how that affected you personally how it shaped who you are today?
Yeah, thank you for the question. When I was 11 years old, um, I was walking down the hallway of my school building in 5th grade. It was the last day of school. It was June 28th, 1994. And the security guard grabbed me, threw me up against the wall, and said, you know, why you walking like that? 11-year-old, right? Walking like what are you talking about? So you walk like a little faggot, and you know what I'm talking about. And if I see you walking like that again, I'm gonna bump you in your lip. So I'm like, so he lets me go. Now walk into my classroom, 39 students, 39 5th graders. And I tell my teacher, I say, hey, she said, she was yelling at me, why are you late? I said, you know, the security guy just grabbed me. Why did he grab you? What'd you do? I said, well, he said I look like a faggot. She said, oh, really? Well, maybe you are one. I just remember all the kids laughing and jeering. And my mother, who passed away 3 years ago, unexpectedly, very young, did not know I would lose her as soon as I did, had told me that if anytime at school, if any adult ever made me feel, you know, like something wasn't right, or humiliated me, or did something that I, you know just wasn't right, like I had her permission to go to the principal's office and tell the principal. And check this out. My mom said, if the principal doesn't let you call, you have my permission to climb across the desk and pick up the phone and call me. That was who my mama was. That is Ramona. That is the kind of mother she was. And so that day I did that. And she came down to the school, and the principal and her talked, and we were gonna have me stay there another few months, and it did not work out. When I came back in the fall, I was beat up, I was attacked. People spat at me, people called me faggot. People created all kind of rumors about me and my best friend at the time, who our friendship unfortunately ended involuntarily. We've only recently like reacclimated, but we had a great friendship, had been best friends since I was in kindergarten. He lived right behind us on Foster Avenue, stopped talking to me. And my mom had to pull me out of that school. And so what I always tell people is that that 11-year-old boy and what that 11-year-old experienced is the drum major for how I approach justice as a legislator. Literally the kind of fights that we are engaged with in Springfield, Representative Cassidy and myself, where, you know, we're trying to ensure that our communities have access to life-saving HIV medications without being accused of sex trafficking by our colleagues, doing nothing more than trying to make sure that restaurants have the option of having gender-neutral restrooms without a colleague threatening to go out and beat people up. So the way I show up as a state senator is very much influenced by what that 11-year-old boy experienced in 1994. Everything from how my mom told me to grapple injustice, feeling empowered and having agency and knowing when to strike, and when something is just not okay, like you got to climb over the desk. And those times where, you know, you have to really know what's right and wrong, and you have to understand how it impacts people around you, the community around you, and lift them up. So that's how the bullying experience I had then, the bullying experiences I had in middle school after that, in a new school, the bullying I experienced as a high school student, trying to come to terms with being a gay teenager, the bullying I experienced in college, where the word fag was just used every other word by insecure young men who, you know, somehow my sexual orientation and my gender identity just becomes a prop for them. And we're paying the price for that today by the kind of obnoxious decisions that we just saw the Supreme Court handed down. So, you know, I hope that answers the question.
It does. It absolutely does. I've also been reading on My Brother's Keeper, and I have found that extremely interesting. Tell us a little about yourself, the scope of the program at My Brother's Keeper, um, and your role there in the mission.
Yeah. So prior to becoming a state senator, there's an echo. Are you hearing an echo?
Yeah.
You hearing it now?
No.
Okay. So prior to becoming a state senator, I was the deputy director of the My Brother's Keeper Alliance at the Obama Foundation, which is former President Obama's signature initiative to enable opportunity for Black and brown young men around the country. So the first thing I did as a gay person when, I was involved with this program is I took the president aside and his staff and said, hey, do you have anything here for queer youth? And it was a sense that like, this was like an afterthought, right? It's like, if we're talking about youth and we're talking about disenfranchised youth, there is no such conversation if we're not talking about LGBTQ youth, right? And much more so even today than 2019, which is when I was with the program. So I essentially led an effort to start to recognize the LGBTQ youth in some of the programs that they had, making sure that at a moment's notice, the program leadership or funders can tell you if asked how many queer youth are in program X in this state. We have zero, usually it's zero, right? Zero, but we know zero is not a real answer. It's like you haven't done the work to really make this an affirming space for queer youth to identify themselves, because we're always there, right? We're not just like, there's no zero presence of LGBTQ youth in any major program or space, particularly again, when you're talking about Black and brown and disenfranchised communities. So I'm really proud of that, we lifted that up. We made that a new focus of the program. We talked to other program providers around the country that serve youth to talk about the urgent need to just acknowledge that LGBTQ youth are in all these programs and routinely feel invisible or erased, like on the good end, and on the bad end feel like completely unsafe, right? And like they are not welcome, or when I was a teenager feeling like the problem was with me and not the system and people and misguided souls around me. And so, that is the legacy I have with My Brother's Keeper. And a lot of these programs, right? Like I've generally, even as a state senator, tried to lift the trunk for some of the programs that serve youth and say, these are very gendered programs, or these sound like very gendered data. What's your thinking about those that are gender expansive? What's your thinking of those of gender nonconforming? What's your thinking about those that are transgender that are either in these programs already and not open, or don't feel welcome, or feel like this is a place for them because they're dealing with the exact same issues that your program is trying to solve around lack of employment, lack of after-school opportunities, lack of community centers, lack of affirming curriculums in their school settings. And so, that's just something that is going to be a hallmark of the whole time that I'm in office, is really lifting up the needs of LGBTQ youth, knowing full well what it was like to be one and feel completely unsupported by the systems around me.
I think that's especially apparent in the suburbs, where there is such a dearth of programming and healthcare support.
Yeah.
So please keep that in mind going forward, both of you.
Well, absolutely. I will say that neither one of us feel like our responsibilities end at our district boundaries. We recognize that being onlys expands those boundaries dramatically. I know Mike's office does this too. Like, we deal with requests for service from all over the state when folks don't feel safe calling their state legislators. It's just real. Yet, we each represent a singular district, but we don't just represent those constituents.
Nope.
Absolutely. Okay, Representative Cassidy. It really is an honor. You have been such a trailblazer for this community. You've been in office for quite some time now, and you've really...
Never thought I'd be here this long.
You've really driven a lot of legislation. And this is probably very trite, but I'm going to say, let's talk about cannabis. Because when Ken said we needed to do something fun, that was my first impression, is we have to talk about cannabis. As a nurse, I've long
given the heavy
been a
stuff that we've
supporter.
also talked about, we do need to talk about cannabis, right? Like, there is a very real benefit to having a natural way to address some of the stress and the heaviness that comes with a week like we've had. So yeah, let's talk about cannabis. But legislatively, that is something. It's funny, when we passed it, there's a woman who's she and her husband were really the driving force behind the medical program, which provided the regulatory framework for our program for good and for ill, quite frankly. We were building on an existing foundation. But Sandy Champion reminded me the day that we passed the adult use bill. She's like, you know, I remember sitting around with Jim talking about this crazy freshman who walked in the door saying she was going to legalize cannabis, and we all thought she was out of her mind. Then we figured out that she was, but she was going to do it anyway. And you know, they were great partners throughout. You know, it was a very long journey, right? You know, just like very often, you know, the overnight sensation thing is neither, right? This was a 6-year project, and working really, really closely and collaboratively with the other 3 women who comprised the marijuana moms, Senator Heather Staines and Toy Hutchinson and Representative Jahan Gordon Booth. We really dove deep. We had 2 years left in the Rauner administration, so we went deep in the policy nerd weeds and looked at what every state that had taken action on this did, and did that with a lens, an eye towards passing the most equity-focused bill in the country. And it remains the most equity-focused bill in the country. Implementation has been a challenge, both in terms of just regular implementation issues and also having a pandemic drop on our heads within months of it becoming legal. And so it's not where I want it to be yet, but we are making progress, and really still are looked to as a model around the country. You know, one of the proudest pieces for me of all of it was being present the day the first of 750,000 expungements were processed. You know, that piece of the puzzle, that collateral consequences piece, is one that is so often neglected. And honestly, for us, it was the core of our motivation. And so being able to be present when State's Attorney Fox started that process was something I will never, ever forget. I still remember the name of the first man whose petition was read, and it blows me away. You know, and then as we were chatting before we started, you know, there was a great deal of excellent timing, since we were all locked in our houses, that this product was legal during the pandemic, for sure.
You know, you probably saved a lot of marriages.
I might have saved mine.
That made such an impact on people's lives, and mostly disproportionately in marginalized communities. So thank you for those expungements, and for continuing to fight for equity in a very broken system.
Yeah, you know, as I said, like, we started from this foundation, and it was the foundation we had to get to 60 votes. Very often, you know, compromise is the nature of our business, and sometimes you find yourself with a terrible choice to make. But you know, the foundation of it was a very closed loop, and so finding ways to break that open in a statutory way was pretty challenging, especially with the knowledge that the cannabis industry is about the most litigious there is. You know, the strategy around the country has been to use litigation to prevent implementation, so that they can maintain their monopoly. We saw that play out here as well. You know, those things weren't surprising to us that they tried. It was really like we would sit around the room, and it was a massive coalition at that point, working on the language towards the end, and okay, what are they going to do if we say this? Well, what if we say it this way? What will their legal strategy be? We spent a lot of time gaming that out, which was a little bit exhausting. But you know, we did close some of the chutes they might have used, but they always find others. That's the nature of folks who specialize in litigation, as we've seen with the Supreme Court. And we're back. I brought us back to the Supreme Court.
And now we're kind of full circle.
Right.
I also know that being a mom is one of your greatest joys. And I've been hearing a lot of people in marginalized communities talk about how hard it's been to go back to work after COVID-19 because of lack of childcare. And with the growing need for childcare within the LGBTQ community as our families grow, what do you think are things that we could do to provide more culturally competent care and to increase the efforts to people who are more underprivileged that would work if they could afford to.
Right, right. And that's very real. I mean, I was a solo parent for a good portion of my early career, and you know, childcare being what it's always been, right? It's expensive, it's hard to find, it's terrifying, quite frankly. You're handing your most precious thing over to in many cases a stranger. So my kids grew up coming to a lot of stuff with me, but you know, if you work at Walmart, you can't bring your kid. Um, you know, so that I had that extraordinary privilege to be able to bring them with me. You know, during the pandemic, we did a lot of things to ease the process, and you know, we've been, since we've returned, we've been sort of looking at those things. Okay, what's the real world, like, normal times use of how we did this? And we've done that around medical licenses. We did a lot around licensing of childcare facilities, and making it easier for them to get and maintain their licenses. But that's layered over with the challenges we see at DCFS. So there's some bureaucratic challenges there as well. But I think it's, you know, worthwhile to contemplate, and Senator Simmons passed a bill around this, you know, collecting data around who is accessing our programs, right? And once we've got some of that data, we're going to be able to make the case for, look, we are underserving this community and this community and this community, right? And those moments, those bills that like kind of feel a little, you know, not a nothing burger, but you're sort of like, oh, it's a data package. But that can be some of the most powerful weapons that we can use to provide supports for our community. So I'm eager to see some of that data, some of those reports start to come in so that we can start to make those cases.
That is awesome. Okay, Chairman Mejia-Beal, it's always a pleasure to see you. As a leader, I'd like to commend you for the work that you've done to expand the diversity and inclusion in the DuPage party. It's hugely different from just a few years ago. I remember the very first event that I went to, and I looked around and I said, oh my God, Ken's walking in here alone. And it didn't feel safe.
I remember. So to paint a picture, it was most of the DuPage events were all white, and everyone was over 50. A few years ago, it was very much, you know, you couldn't tell the difference between a Democratic event and a Republican event, and I wanted to change that. It was, and that's the reality. I wanted to change it. I wanted, you know, young people and older people and different genders and different races and different socioeconomic backgrounds. I wanted the Democratic Party of DuPage to look like America. So that was my goal.
And I will have to say, at the gala this year, you proved that out.
Yes.
The party is vastly different.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Having lived in DuPage County when I first moved up here, yes, I'm guessing the people that were at the DuPage Dems meetings when I was living there in the early 90s were probably still there when you took over. So
yes, they were the ones saying, vote him out. Okay, sorry.
So our challenge this year is going to be getting people out to vote, Ken, and how are we going to do that?
Yeah, so here's the problem. The problem is Democrats tend to get comfortable. And when we get comfortable, we get complacent. And when we get complacent, we lose. So how we get the vote out is simply reminding voters, hey, that thing that you like could be taken away from you with the right lawyers, the right legislation, and the wrong people on the Supreme Court. What I wish we talked about more to influence the vote are there are so many bills that are kind of written, even in Springfield, that never make it anywhere because they're so ridiculous and they don't have the votes for it. But it's still important for voters to know that these kind of things can still happen. if the wrong people are not there. I mean, we're very lucky in Illinois. We have the right people. But if we kind of get complacent, we could lose the right people, and boom, now we're like our neighbors in Indiana, and I don't want that. So how do we get our voters out? By reminding them, not of what they don't have, but reminding them what they have, and reminding them how precious what we have is, and how special what we have is, and how we have to hold on to it. There's two kinds of people. There's the kind of people that fight like hell to get something, and then there's people that fight like hell to keep something. And we have to identify that we as the Democrats, we've gotten so much, we have to fight like hell to keep it, because the Republicans fight like hell to get stuff, to take it from us. So we have to fight like hell to keep it. That's the message we got to get to our voters.
That's an outstanding message, because the only thing standing between Indiana and Kentucky and us are the people we elect.
That is it. That is it. That is all. And a bunch of casinos.
I think Indiana's got a few casinos.
Yeah, they do.
Probably not Kentucky, though.
Probably not.
They have a lot of meth there.
And hemp, lots and lots of hemp.
Got it. Did not know that. I don't know much about Kentucky.
Mitch McConnell owns one of the largest hemp processing facilities. So
we're going to have to dig into that off the table. I got questions. I got questions.
Yeah.
Ken, talk to us a little bit about coming out, because I know your closest confidant was your grandmother.
Yes.
How is that different with that kind of generation gap?
My grandmother was a very special person. It was not difficult at all. So my grandmother was a Southern Baptist who, during the 80s, she was a member of a church, Antioch Baptist Church, is a very popular church on the south side of Chicago. And when men started to come in with lesions from AIDS, the pastor at the time started to ask them not to come because it was scaring other people. So what my grandmother did is she actually started a Saturday night Bible school, Saturday night church, whatever you want to call it, in the basement, so that these men could worship God without judgment and with love. And this is the early, I think my grandma, this is when it was being called grid. Like, this is a long time ago. And a lot of people in the church stopped speaking to my grandmother because they said, well, you're breathing their air, you're touching them. And my grandmother always believed that real Christianity is not about where you worship, but how you worship humanity. And that's something she instilled in me. So for me, it was easy because I had such an extraordinary experience. My grandmother went to gay bars. A story that I tell often, the first time I went to the Pride Parade, I was very, I had a very privileged upbringing. I was very conservative growing up, and not politically, but just the way I was as a human being. And the first time I got off of the red line at my first Pride Parade, I was 21 years old, and there were men in like leather pants, and there was nudity, and it scared the hell out of me. I was terrified. So I got back on the train and I went back home. I did not go to the parade. I was terrified. And I told my grandmother, in my first Pride Parade at 22 that I actually went to, my grandmother was there with me. She went with me to a bar called Lucky Horseshoe, and she gave me money to tip the dancers. It was a great
grandmother so much. Oh my God.
She was awesome. So and my grandmother's just a different kind of person. and she wasn't judgmental, and it helped me to be very comfortable being who I am, because I didn't have the stigma of I had the stigma of disappointing my grandmother, but not because of who I chose to be with. So I was very lucky to have that. And I know a lot of people don't have that. But I was lucky enough to have someone tell me every single day that I was good enough. And I hope that everybody has somebody in their life during those formative years to tell them that they're good enough, because it's so, like, I love you is kind of a big thing. Like, everybody wants to hear that. And I think that's great. I'm not taking away from love. But to have someone tell you that you're good enough, oh my God, that is so much more important in the big scheme of things. So I was very lucky, and my upbringing and everything around me was all about loving myself, respecting myself, and sharing the love and respect that I have to humanity.
Your commitment to the HIV/AIDS community now makes an even bigger impact.
Yeah, it was, you know, my grandmother lost all of her gay friends to AIDS, every last one of them. And before I turned 30, I lost 6 of my closest friends to AIDS. So working in HIV and AIDS research is the #1 love and passion of my life.
Thank you for sharing
Thank you for that, Kelly. I'm guessing I'm not far off from your grandmother's age, because I was delivering meals when it was still GERD. So I remember those days a lot.
It definitely bad times.
Yeah.
I graduated from nursing school in the mid-'80s, and it was a rough time.
Yeah.
I was really glad during this pandemic that people stood up for the healthcare workers and frontline workers, because we sure didn't have that in the 80s.
Mm,
We were pariahed.
I'm sure.
Okay. So there's one thing I'd like to have, one more thing I'd like to have kind of a group chat about. Some of the local pride organizations, including my own, have been hearing from people that we've been calling loosely American refugees. These are individuals or families who have left their homes in deep red states to come to Illinois to protect themselves or their families from legislation that seeks to, in some cases, just outlaw their very existence. Going forward, how do you think that we can best provide help to these folks? I know of one family that has called and said they just left. They didn't have jobs. They didn't have a plan. They just kind of showed up in Will County. And it was because their kid needed medical care that they were no longer allowed to get in Florida.
Yeah, I actually introduced a bill around this. So now we have an echo. Yikes, that was scary. So it was House Bill 3368, and it provides a tax credit for in migration for people seeking care, or to provide care, or to teach. You know, we provide tax credits to businesses to move when they can afford to do everything they need to do. But human level credits are kind of rare. But I think that if we're truly rolling out the welcome mat, the first thing we can do is, and even if it's a small amount of money, it is some benefit, right? It's some acknowledgement of what these folks have been through to get here. And also, frankly, like, we don't have enough healthcare workers as it is. Healthcare workers that are working in Florida that feel hated on, or teachers, like all of my siblings who have retired from the Florida school system, bring those credentials to Illinois. We're going to expedite your licensure. We've already done that. And we're going to roll out the welcome mat. I think that's our responsibility. If we're really going to be the welcoming state that we are putting ourselves out there to be, I think this is a money where our mouth is moment, to provide that measure of, you know, a little bit of welcome.
I will say that I think what we can do is be very welcoming to these folks, but more importantly, I think it's shameful. I think it's shameful that we have people in this country that have to leave their homes, leave their states, to go to other states to be treated like humans. So I think we should be talking about this more often, every chance we get, because it is shameful. We talk, and these are the same groups of people that talk about, immigrants or migrants and say horrible things about them. We have a problem here in this country because of the bigotry. Racism and bigotry is very, very American. So we have to deal with that and not deal with it in a sense of this is what we can do. And I do want to say I'm very grateful to have Representative Cassidy and Senator Simmons, but it is shameful that we have to have our legislators here in Illinois dealing with the fact that there are so many elected bigots across this country. We have to talk about it.
Absolutely. I know that when I moved here from Florida, and I put that state in my rear view very intentionally when I was, I think, 19 or 20 when I moved, because I wasn't safe as a little queer kid there. And, it was not where I was going to make my life. But, when I moved up here, we planned for about 6 months, right? These families don't have that kind of time to plan a move. These folks, they are refugees in a manner of speaking. They fit the definition. They had to leave their home for their safety. And I feel for all of these folks. And I feel for the providers that are, dealing with this influx, both on the gender affirming care side and on the abortion side. They are really very much, it's spinning plates to keep the resources available,
Mm-hmm.
I agree with everything that's been said. I mean, this one to me is a straightforward no-brainer. My dad was a asylum seeker to this country and got here a year before I was born, a year and some change, enough time to meet my mom, and the rest is history. And people services were there. People were helpful to my family, the Ethiopian side, welcoming them to, several of the neighborhoods I now represent as a state senator. And so I look at this situation, I'm just like, well, why is it, again, it's this common theme of like, why are things getting harder to do now that like people a generation ago and a generation even before that, even, my grandmother's generation, they seem to be on the right side of history and they just seem to get this stuff. Now, humanitarian crisis is unfolding. And I have felt like completely unimpressed with the responses that I've seen, in terms of like broad level responses from the top on down, right? Like people need work permits. Why is that so hard? People want work, right? Human beings want to eat. They want to have a place to live at night. They want to know that their kids are going to be able to eat. Like these are not like radical ideas or far-fetched goals. And I just don't know, like our country in 2023 is just I don't know what to say.
Yeah.
Okay, so one more group question. What is each of you's favorite memory of a Pride event that you have participated in? And I will wait.
I will go, God. I will. I think my favorite was I was at a Pride event back in my 20s with my grandma, because we went in my 20s with my grandma.
I'm really jealous of your grandmother.
She was my best friend. And awesome. For some odd reason, she was collecting all the condoms and the lube. They were all together. and she had this purse full of like condoms and lube, and it was such
Some grandmothers steal sweet and low.
like, no, not mine. So we go to this bar, and there's all these men like introducing themselves to me, and I was just like, what is happening? And I realized that my grandmother was giving out all the condoms and then saying, I'm here with my grandson and he's there, and it just didn't read the right way. And it was such an
Here's
awkward...
a condom. Go introduce yourself to my grandson.
Yes, that's exactly
amazing.
What happened. It was so awkward. It was so, but that was my grandma for you. And that was the last Pride event we went to together. So I'll never, I remember being so embarrassed.
You're not going to top that.
And I was so mad, though. I was so mad at my grandmother. And now, you know, that she's not here, and years later, I realized, you know, she didn't mean any harm. And more importantly, she was just trying to make sure everybody had safe fun. And it was, but that's my favorite Pride memory.
That's amazing. That is amazing. You ready to go, Mike? Or
yeah, I got a lot of memories and non-memories from Pride Parade.
Those fuzzy ones are good.
Yeah, those are good.
A little fuzzy, you know. You know, this like week, actually, when it rained, was kind of an interesting moment, because like when it started raining right when the parade kicked off.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, it was almost trite. I was like, okay, you don't want to call Mother Nature trite, because then Mother Nature can just like blow out your windows with a tornado. But I was like, of course you make it start raining the minute we kick off right here at Broadway and Montrose, right? Of course, okay, now it's pouring. And then it was just something about like I looked around me, and I'm like seeing like, you know, like I saw like Maria Haddon and her wife Natalia, and they were having a blast. And then I look around and I see like, you know, my partner is like grabbing my hand, and we're running, trying to keep up with the flow. We got this big ass banner, right? Like with my face on it, which I'm just like still getting used to being an elected official. I'm like, why it's on the banner? This is tripped out stuff. And then like just seeing everybody excited to walk this walk that I've been doing my whole life. But, you know, the zeitgeist right now is different than it was 10 years ago. 10 years ago, I would walk with my friends, and, you know, we bring our little flask and, you know, take shots and scream and yell, and, you know, go to somebody's apartment and just be together for the whole day, and take Monday off from work, and like, just being ourselves, right? And just having fun, and just enjoying the experience. This just felt more like the crowd was politicized, right? You could feel it in the air that you look people in the eye as you walk, that you can tell like they know what's up. Like they know about the book bans, they know about the attack on gender affirming care, right? And they see this whole parade as a you know, a protest almost, right? Like we are defiantly being ourselves in the face of just wicked backlash against all of our rights. And this parade was like a very special experience for me. The rain, the way it all happened, you know, finishing the parade, I stayed out and watched the parade, and was sad when it was over. I felt that crash, and I got back home where I was like, good Lord, I wish we could do this like, you know, every month, man. Like we deserve it, because like we're in the headlines all the time. So let's be us all the time, right? Why do we do this once a year? Like if we're really going to be the butt end of every untalented politician running for office, like just like those kids and those teachers that humiliated me as a teenager, well then since we've been politicized, our whole being has been politicized, let's just celebrate and resist every day. And so I'm taking that Pride energy with me right into July.
I love this.
I love that.
That's awesome. So I don't know if it is the year of my first parade as an elected, where the float factory got broken into and they were all vandalized, and I ended up walking with a kid on my back and a kid in my arms, and then like friends just came out of the crowd and helped me carry my kids, and we were all just like, everybody just rallied, because you know, there were no floats. There were like 10 floats in the parade because everybody's floats had been destroyed. So that was one of those great moments of like just what community means. But honestly, my most entertaining Pride memory was the first year that I was working for then candidate for state's attorney, Dick Devine. And we were riding in a convertible, and the banner, you know, Dick Devine for Cook County State's Attorney. and the crowd starts chanting, "We love Dick. Dick is divine." And they did it the entire parade route. And he initially was a little, because he was an older guy and just like, very straight laced. I think I heard him say "damn" once in the 8 years that I worked for, or 12 years that I worked for him. But he eventually got into it, and he was conducting and, getting people going. And we finished the parade, and he turned to me and he said, "As God is my witness, in all my years on this planet, I never knew my name was funny."
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that. Like the chant itself was good enough, right? That would have been enough, as we say in Judaism, Dayenu. But then for him to deliver, "I never knew my name was funny," it's just the capper.
I think my very favorite Pride moment was the first Pride that I attended in Chicago. Coming from South Carolina, I was fully convinced that there were more people at the Pride Parade than there were in the entire state that I grew up in. And it made me really happy.
You found your people.
I found my people. I grew up with Nikki Haley, so.
Mm.
Yeah. And being from Florida, I see you.
Yeah. Okay. Does anybody have any questions? In the chat? Okay, well, we're running close to on time. I'd like to thank everybody for coming this evening, all of the people to view, and for the people that will see this long after we have left this space. I would really like to thank you for holding space with us this evening. All of you are such inspirations. Keep fighting that good fight. We will keep voting those good votes. I hope everybody has had a happy Pride Month. Remember, get out and vote. It's the most important act of resistance that you can imagine.
Thank you for all that y'all have done to bring us DuPage, y'all, because our roll calls wouldn't look the way they look without the work that y'all have done in that county. And I am so grateful. I mean, from the days of my first primary when I lived in Wheaton, and I asked for a Democratic ballot, and they all looked at each other like I was speaking some very exotic language. And they literally had to rifle through boxes to find a Democratic ballot, and asked me several times, "Are you sure you don't want one that actually has somebody to vote for on it?" So you've come a long way, baby.
Welcome to DuPage County.
That's right.
We'd love to see it.
We're not giving it back.
No.
Good.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much.
Okay. I think that will conclude our evening. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure to meet
Thanks,
all
Larry.
of you.
Thanks, Larry. Thanks, everybody.